I'm going to call to order our budget hearing. Today is Thursday, May 9th, 2019, of the fiscal year 20 operating budget, the Budget and Finance Committee and Metro Council. Before us, we have the District Attorney's Office with Attorney General Mr. Funk. I'll let you do the introductions, and just for the viewing audience, if you can just briefly provide an overview of what your fund office does for the city, and then you can walk us through your budget, and the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Glenn Funk. I'm the District Attorney for Nashville. What our office does is we decide how to handle every criminal case that gets brought in Davidson County. In the last fiscal year, we had roughly 75 to 80,000 charges lodged against citizens, and it was our job to decide which of those charges needed to go to trial, which ones should be plea bargained, which ones should be dismissed. Generally, what we're trying to do is make sure that the community is safe and make sure that we have supported victims. Our budget is roughly $15.7 million. We get $7.3 million from Metro and $8.4 million from the state of Tennessee. That's about a 54% state budget with 46% coming from Metro. The last year, just to talk about a handful of our accomplishments, we've seen our murder prosecutions rise, and unfortunately that's because the murder rate rose for a period of time, and those cases are just now coming to trial, though I think the murder rate last year for Metro Nashville did in fact drop. Our early intervention meetings, where we are supporting victims of domestic violence, have increased as well. Currently, what happens in Nashville is that if someone is the victim of domestic violence, then that next day we get a report from the police department as to who those victims were, and they get a call that morning and invited to come down and meet with the district attorney. Of the folks that we were able to actually get to come down and meet with us in person that next day, we had nearly 80% return rate to court, which is a rate that is unheard of pretty much anywhere else in the country, and many other jurisdictions have come and talked to us about that program. Several in the state of Tennessee and even some outside the state of Tennessee. The Philadelphia DA, in fact, was in town speaking at Vanderbilt and came by our office and talked to us about that program and is looking to follow up himself. Another accomplishment I think that's significant from our office is one that required us to work with the Sheriff's Department, the General Sessions judges, and the public defenders. It's called Steering Clear, and it's a program where individuals in Nashville who've been cited for driving on a revoked license, when they show up to be booked and processed, have their cases recalled. The Sheriff's Department then works with those individuals to see what needs to be done to help that person navigate the bureaucratic thicket to get their license reinstated. It saves resources on behalf of the Public Defender's Office, the DA's office, the judges, the clerks. When as recently as 2013, we had 18,000 inmate days in jail just for driving on a revoked license. Last year it was less than 200 because we still prosecute folks who are on probation for DUI and who've had a wreck. But going from 18,000 inmate days in jail to about 200 or so last year means that we've saved $1.8 million as a city. More importantly, those individuals were at home, and those were able to work and able to take care of their families, able to get driver's licenses. Just since the Steering Clear program got fully up and running September 4th of 2018, we've seen 4,000 citations recalled, and the Sheriff's Department tries to track how many folks have had their licenses reinstated. They have confirmed, I believe, their last report to us, over 600 license reinstatements, and they think that it could be as high as 3 to 4 times that many. So for all those reasons, I'm especially proud of that partnership with other Metro office holders and the cooperation that's taken to achieve this success. The budget requests we had that were listed in the made it into the mayor's budget. We had a contractual rent increase. We initially leased space in Washington Square in 1993. In 2013, the lease was extended to 2023. There was a contractual rate increase, and so we needed the additional $31,000 to cover that. We're now at $17.50 a square foot. That did make it into the mayor's budget. There's also additional space that was pursuant to the lease. That space is being used as we build out extra space for the grand jury. on the 4th floor of Washington Square. That's an extra $48,300, and that is in the mayor's budget. We had asked for 2 extra assistant district attorneys to cover dockets that are in courtroom 5D, which are newly created criminal dockets. They did not make it in there. I actually worked the 1B and 5D docket myself a few weeks ago just to see how we should properly cover that. We may not be quite as efficient as I would like, but we're going to be able to cover that with existing prosecutors for now, and I may come back and report later on in this fiscal year how that's working out. We also had a victim witness coordinator position that had a federal match where the feds were going to match at a 3-to-1 rate that this body, the council, approved last year, but then it did not make it into the final budget. We still were able to make that higher, and thanks to cooperations with the Office of Family Safety and Diane Lance, we were able to get enough Metro funding that we had the federal match, and we were able to have that victim witness coordinator. That person is targeted to particularly serve underserved communities, primarily folks that are either new Americans or folks that may be undocumented. We especially need that help for victim witness coordinators on the undocumented because criminals often target the vulnerable, and someone who is vulnerable, very few folks are as vulnerable as somebody who's undocumented, and those folks are reluctant to call the police and report their victimization, and then that makes the whole community less safe. But we've been able to cobble together enough money last year to be able to have that person on staff. It's not in the budget that the mayor has proposed. It would have required $23,400. We are going to see where we can find those funds, and so we are not asking the council to rewrite the budget to get that $23,400. Hopefully I'm not going to have to come back and ask for a supplemental on that, but I am not planning on laying that victim witness coordinator off and stopping serving that community. But hopefully I'm going to be able to do that within our budget or by getting some funds from somewhere else in Metro. Body cams we put in because we project at an average of 40 to 50 body cameras for one employee to review footage, a need for about 50 additional employees. That did not get put into this budget. We were asking for roughly $3.5 to $4 million for the recurring expenses and about $5 million to build out space to house those employees. The mayor did, I think, wisely put $3 million into just the general budget for all stakeholders to be able to access as the body cameras get deployed. I know that the award was made just yesterday. We're in the 10-day period for folks to object to that award. I don't know how long it'll take to sort that out and actually get body cameras to start. I would be surprised if we actually had those up and going before fall, and it might be all the way until January 1st. If that happens, then we will come back and advise, but hopefully we'll be able to make things work within the $3 million that the mayor has set aside, and by this time next year we will have a good working number of what exactly we're going to need, and we'll have some specifics to back it up. I heard Public Defender Johnson talk about the fact that they will need additional employees to be reviewing body camera footage. I agree with that 100%. Many communities that have body camera footage don't provide it instantly to defense counsel. I think it is not only constitutionally required, but I think it is ethically required for us to provide that to the public defenders and to any defense counsel as soon in the process as possible, meaning within days, not within months. They're going to need to be able to review it themselves before they can advise a client on a plea bargain, before they can properly cross-examine witnesses at a preliminary hearing. And so we are committed to that, and we're going to work with them and work with the police department to try to make sure that we can provide that. That will require some additional personnel hours on our part. And then we're going to have extra needs once the cases start getting ready for trial. We'll also have to make sure that we have privacy sensitivity. I understand when you were talking to Judge Mondelli and Natalie Steers from JIS about the fact that some personal information got out that had just been placed on warrants. Well, I'm very concerned that if a police officer is taking a report and has their body camera on and turns to the victim of crime and says, what's your name, what's your address, what's your phone number, Social Security, whatever other personal information, once that's on the body camera, if we're providing that to defense attorneys who may then be showing it to their clients, that could be trouble. If you show, if the officer comes into a home burglary and gets walked around through a victim's house, you know, oh, well, this is where your gun safe is. Oh, well, behind this picture is where you keep your jewelry. That could be a disaster if that gets out, and so we have to be sensitive to privacy concerns, and so we're going to have some redaction issues, and then ultimately I think the courts are going to settle some things. But you can imagine that there will be manpower needed at the district attorney's office level to make sure that we take care of the privacy concerns. I have some other really good news to tell you. 3 years ago, when Mayor Berry asked every department to project into the future what they expected, we knew that elder abuse was looming on the horizon. In fact, our office was charged with the original draft of the rewrite of the elder abuse law, which has been adopted piecemeal by the state legislature and it is pretty much finished with its passage as of this legislative term. We've had to start doing vulnerable adult protection investigative team meetings every month. We reviewed 1,000 reports from Adult Protective Services, and that turned into dozens of cases. I projected to Mayor Berry that we would need an additional 2 assistant district attorneys to handle that, with one of them coming on board this fiscal year. Fortunately, the governor, legislature, and the district attorneys conference recognized the volume that was coming through the Nashville system, and so the state added an assistant district attorney, and I do not have to stand in front of you or sit in front of you tonight asking for funding for that position. That has now been borne by the state, and I'm happy to report that. Further on this additional space for the grand jury and the build-out, while Metro is going to have to pay the rent on that space, the state is paying roughly $100,000 for construction, build-out, and furniture. And that is not a cost that's going to be borne by the Metro taxpayers out of the Metro budget. Lastly, we meet monthly with the mayor on a criminal justice committee that has a number of stakeholders that come. And we have been talking at length about what everyone is projecting their costs are. We have been able to get the state to fund a pair of body camera analysts. And they have now been hired with a contract not to exceed $80,000, but $80,000 out of the state treasury, not Metro Treasury. And Paul Romelli and Kay Shopard Cohen are going to be in town in June. They have extensive experience in justice integration systems, information systems. They are leaders in the field. They are going to work with us and with other partners to try to figure out exactly where the needs are going to be. They have already sent a resource impact checklist that would include that in terms of technology, they're going to be looking at how much computer network, how much network capacity, how much digital storage, how much software, how many displays and presentation equipment we are going to need, and then probably we'll be able to do the same thing for other partners like police department, and obviously we would make their research available to the public defenders and offer to cooperate with them. Also, staffing with regards to how many police department liaisons the DA's office is going to need, how many folks in digital video administration, what the technical support is that we will need, what the staff training will be required, how many people for video review, for redaction, for distribution, for transcription, because obviously when you're entering a piece of evidence in front of a jury, you're going to want a transcription of that. And then something that I had not even thought about until we met with them this week, translation services, because sometimes folks are going to, the body cams are going to pick up folks that are not speaking English, and we're going to need translators to do that, and do that at a time when defense counsel and prosecutors know what was said and how it was said in order to make intelligent decisions on what justice demands as far as trying to resolve a case. So we're going to have all of that information, at least the first phase of it, by the end of June, and they will continue to work with us. I will make sure that the council and the mayor's office gets whatever information we have, because this is going to be a situation where when we start deploying these cameras, we want to be in front of this issue instead of getting behind this issue. The Constitution demands that the district attorney's office provides this information, all right? Justice demands that victims are fully supported, and that means that we win the cases that we need to win, and do so, Ms. Johnson, in a constitutional way. I know she's looking at me with a skeptical face back there, but our job is to make sure the community is safe and make sure we've supported victims, and to do so in a constitutional manner. And so I'm excited that the state has been willing to provide the funding for these folks to come in and do this exercise for us. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you. I noticed on in your budget, you've got the same thing that I'm seeing in some other courts, which is a significant drop in fines and penalties. Can you explain why you're anticipating that to happen?
The arrest rate, especially on minor offenses, misdemeanors, has gone down. 30%. For a number of years in 2010 to 2014, we were running at roughly 100,000 charges a year. 2018, I think that dropped to 67 to 70. If you look at, just the last fiscal year, it might have been as many as 75,000, but, that's gone down 25 to 30%. And then we are also trying to work on trying to find more diversion programs, to whether it's Steering Clear, which has removed 4,000 revoked driver's license cases just since September, whether it's trying to find a way to make sure that folks who might be charged with a minor offense like a first offense, simple possession of marijuana, allow them to do a drug class or public service work, but try to find a way to divert them out of the system and not have a fine and cost and fees come into that. We are trying to make sure that the criminal justice system focuses on the violent crime, trying to focus on the victim crime. I've heard people talk about it as in, let's make a difference between the people we're scared of and the people that we're frustrated with. If the criminal justice system is most concerned with funding itself by saddling citizens with fines and court costs, then I think we have somehow skewed our perception of what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do here is make sure the community's safe.
Great. I think that's. I'm pleased at all the things that we're seeing in the realm of criminal justice reform. And would you say that, it's entirely likely that we're actually seeing savings in other parts of the criminal justice system as a result of those diversions?
I'm sure that we have a lot of savings with regards to the costs of creating files, the cost of logging files into the computer system, the cost of collections, because sometimes these debts aren't really collected because it's folks in poverty that are getting a lot of these charges in the first place. I think that it could slow down the number of personnel that are being asked for in my office. And so we will see a good amount of savings, obviously, just if you look at the incarceration costs just for revoked driver's license. And I believe I'm correct on this, that the month that had the highest incarceration rate within our local jail last year was less than the lowest month 2 years ago. And so if we are reducing the amount of pretrial incarceration on minor misdemeanors, and if we are reducing the amount of times when we ask for the severe sanction of incarceration if it's a minor offense, then I think we're doing the right thing, while at the same time we're able to devote those resources to fully support the victims of aggravated robbery, rape victims, child abuse victims, the murder cases. That's where we really need to be devoting all the resources, in my opinion.
That sounds like a good plan. Do you know if anybody is, I mean, it would be, I think, very helpful over the course of several years to gather data as we evaluate criminal justice reform to be able to say, here's what we did and here are the results, and not only did various kinds of crime rates go down, but there were financial impacts that were positive as well. Is your office gathering
Well, the
some of
Office
that
of
data?
Criminal Justice Planning is in charge of those
Great.
statistics. They were formed back when we had overcrowded jails in the 1990s. And they were really charged to try to make sure that we knew how many folks we had incarcerated and make projections to what we were doing to try to get those figures within federal compliance. They are still in existence today. Donna Blackburn is in charge of that office, and we meet monthly, and she compiles statistics, and so that's where the statistic came from that I just gave you about incarceration rates per month. But then she's also able to do other deep dives, such as racial demographics, such as incarceration rates per charge, and then we can go to the state Department of Corrections and Sentence Management to see, the length of sentences for the convicted felons that have been sent to the Tennessee Penitentiary.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councilwoman Porterfield.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you for the work that you're doing, especially around the program that you spoke about with the Victims Advocate that is serving our most vulnerable populations. So thank you for that. I did have a question about the program that you talked about at the beginning with the calling victims of domestic violence the next day, and 80% of them returning to provide that information. For the people that are not returning, that 20%, do you all do any type of provide any service or dig deep to find out why they're not returning, if they are intimidated by their abuser, if it's a transportation issue, a language barrier, is there any way to find out why they're not returning?
Yeah, domestic violence is a really tough area for prosecution. In fact, across the country, it's only about 5 to 20% of those cases that are successfully prosecuted. From the time that the victim of domestic violence calls the police officer to get some help that night while that person is being victimized, almost instantly there are tons of pressures to get that person to drop the case. Well, if I'm in jail, who's going to pay the apartment rent? Well, we're married. I thought you swore before God and man, for better or for worse. If you show up and prosecute me, I'll really beat you up the next time. Right. All those and many others are the pressures. It's just naturally intimidating to come to the courthouse. And if you're getting a lot of your information from the defendant about what's going to happen when you get there, you can be intimidated out of coming. One of the things that's good about our early intervention meetings is they get to meet the DA. They get to meet a victim witness coordinator. We meet them in the courthouse, and they get to see the Gene Crow Advocacy Center that's in the courthouse, and they get to know, okay, this is not a scary place, and while I will still have some trepidation walking into the courthouse, I'm going to have support there. And it's really exciting. And the things that Diane Lance and the Office of Family Safety have done are really, I think, the best in the entire nation. And the new Family Safety Center out on Murfreesboro Road is I think, clearly the best in the country. And one of the reasons we built it so well is because she and others traveled the country to see what other family safety centers around the country were before we built ours. But even with that, right, a large number of people, the folks that we don't reach, only about 10 to 20% of those come to court. And the folks that we do reach, 20% still don't come to court. So how do we reach out to them? Well, we text and we call. We have victim witness coordinators that contact these folks. We have two people that are a prosecution support unit whose job it is to meet victims where they are. All right? Oh, I can't get there. oh, I don't have a ride. Maybe that's a convenient excuse. Maybe they really don't have a ride. Their job is to go out there and meet with them, give them a ride down to meet at the early intervention meeting, or even give them a ride to court and then home from court. Now that we've got offices at the Family Safety Center, we are going to be able to have folks, if they can't leave their jobs to come down and meet with us, we'll meet with them after work at the Family Safety Center. And so we're doing our best to try to make sure that every victim is supported. Sometimes that victim support is going to be, I'm not ready to try to testify in court and have him convicted. What we're trying to do is make sure that they know there is a safe harbor, that they have people that can help them get counseling, that can help them get to a shelter if they need to get to a shelter, that we can support them as far as making sure that their kids have the services that they need to be healthy, because the real goal here is to make sure that the victim is in a safer relationship, whether it's this one or the next. And what we would like to do is hold the offender accountable, but we also want to make sure that person ends up in a safer relationship, whether it's this one or the next. And domestic violence is really a generational problem. If you're a little boy growing up in a household where dad beats mom, he's going to think that's normal. That's the normal way to treat a woman. If a little girl grows up in the same household, she's going to think that's the way her future husband can treat her. And what I want folks to know is you cannot put your hands and settle on another person and settle things in a physical way. And there's nothing worth that, not even love. Some things are more important than love, and one of those things is physical safety. And I really believe that if we properly support victims relentlessly the way we're doing, that we can change this behavior in this generation, and we're going to see a lot less of it in the next generation.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Porterfield. Thank you so much, General Funk, and to you and your team. Also want to thank you for submitting your questionnaire timely, and also want to thank you for collaborating with the Public Defender's Office and the Sheriff's Department. We love when agencies collaborate. It benefits the city as a whole. Before I adjourn, committee members and council members, we're off tomorrow. We're back here Monday at 4 o'clock. We'll start 4 o'clock sharp with the mayor's office budget hearing. And with that, we are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.org.